Okay, so Zombie 2 is officially out. It's very exciting. I watched the live stream, which was pretty good. I thought all the songs sounded pretty good as far as the live stream goes. It's a whole different ball game though, listening to it, to a studio version of the song. So I already did a reaction and review of Termination, which was the first single. Did a reaction and review of Nightfall, which was the second single. I'm pretty excited to hear the rest of this album and to critique the lyrics and, of course, the instrumentation as well. As far as the lyrics go, I'll try and get right into Forlorn right here, but I'm just going to say the lyrics are probably going to be pretty common or pretty much the same throughout these songs. They already said, and it is a concept album. But they already said before they released the album that this whole album was going to be about basically that the world is over. The almost said the pandemic has taken over. The zombie apocalypse has taken over, and everything's done for. We're all done for, and that's the theme of the album. So that's gonna permeate right through. So there's no question that the inspiration for this album came from this global pandemic that we're facing. Obviously, it fits well with their first zombie EP, where this virus was the cause of the zombie apocalypse, and then they go with that. So it's not surprising to see underlying themes that kind of touch reality, right? So there are things, and that's how I'm going to look at the lyrics as I go through this, is look at yes, this is a fictional story, right? But there's a lot of reality mixed in with it, and that's what's fascinating about this zombie EP. I talk about it in my review to Nightfall 2. That's what's fascinating about the whole zombie idea as well, because there's little pieces of reality mixed in there. And I talk about psychological and sociological factors that are underlying. But anyways, this is getting too much, and I should probably just listen to the song and react to it. So here we go. We're going to look at Forlorn. And based on the live stream, it should be good. Apparently this is like their heaviest one, so, and I think that's true. It's got a catchy riff right off the start. Nice. Crazy screams as usual. There's a triplet, classic. Fairly catchy, clean vocals, but again, he doesn't sing as high as usual anymore. That's okay. This is crazy heavy. This is crazy. Nice. Back to this little break, which isn't bad. I typically don't like these breaks, but I feel like this one is okay. Very doom metal there. At least that's what I'm calling it. I think that was like a little bit of doom metal influence there with those very dissonant guitar chords. Yeah, very good track. Obviously very heavy, but very typical for what the Devil Wears Prada used to write, and I think it was very good. And if we look at the lyrics, I don't have to talk about the instrumentation, because we all know that was crazy good, and I'm sure most people, if you like the Devil Wears Prada and what they've done in the past, you'll like this one for sure. This one's kind of interesting lyrically, just because at the beginning of the song, it talks about, at the time of the onset, humanity mismanaged the gravity of the virus. So that probably makes you think, or at least you can relate to some of that today, because that's been a huge thing in our world. I live in Canada, so I feel like, maybe I'm wrong with this, but I feel like the States handled it a little better than Canada did. I'm not too terribly pleased with all the lockdowns and stuff, which continue to go on in Canada. But that's a whole political debate that you get into. But anyways, so it's just clear from this this song that this is talking about zombie apocalypse, but it's also kind of a little bit of a dig at what we're going through right now. And that's why it's so interesting, this album, because it's relatable, and yeah, there's a lot of things that we can pull out of this song that we can relate to. So talks about biblical devastation, which is kind of an interesting term. In the Bible, there's a lot of devastation. If you think of the 10 plagues with Egypt, that's pretty devastating. There's other stories too, but 10 plagues is kind of the one that jumps out to me right off the bat. We've lost control. We're in a panic. We've lost control like we ever had it. It's hopeless now. This tragedy, exhausted of necessities, we're forced to flee without escape. Complete retreat since the outbreak. So that's basically the song, and it makes sense. So those are the lyrics for Forlorn. Gotta be honest, I actually had to look up that word because I've never heard it before. But it basically means everything's hopeless, hopelessness. So I want to propose a kind of theory or a question for you to think about, and you can comment below as well. And this has to do with the album art of Zombie 2. So the album art is a cathedral that's been abandoned, and it's in rough shape. And that makes me think, especially in this context of everything's hopeless, is this perhaps, I'm going to try and phrase this in a way that makes sense, is this perhaps the most scary thing, that the church itself falls apart? And by that I mean the Christian church has been around for over 2,000 years now, since the advent and the ascension of Christ. Of course, then the church continued to grow, and the Christian church continues now. If the Christian church disappeared, I would say that would be a devastating and actually impossible thing. It would never happen, but it would be a devastating time in the world. And that is because Christ and his promise of the resurrection promises us that we have eternal life, that we will be raised from death in the end. So it's interesting that they chose this as their album art for a time that's supposed to be like, we're done, the world's over, right? And they choose this church that's broken down and abandoned. That's my question. Is that the worst case scenario for our world, to see the Church of Christ abandoned? I would say yes.